You stopped answering certain calls.
You left the group chat. You didn't show up to the reunion.
And somewhere along the way, without making a big announcement, without a dramatic falling out, you just quietly started cutting people off.
Not out of anger, not out of bitterness. You just stopped.
And the people around you have a name for what you're doing. They call it depression. They call it isolation. They whisper that you've become bitter, that something broke in you, that you've given up on life. They're wrong. What they're witnessing isn't a collapse. It's a biological upgrade. Your brain, after 6 decades of running every possible social program, absorbing every possible demand, accommodating every possible person, has finally shifted into its most sophisticated mode. And in that mode, it is doing something extraordinary. It is choosing, not randomly, not out of sadness, with a precision that only comes from a brain that has finally learned what actually matters. You were built to do exactly what you're doing, and the biology behind it will change how you see yourself for the rest of your life.
Society has decided that a man who pulls back from his social circles is a man in decline. The logic goes like this. Connection is good, more connection is better, and a man who retreats from connection must be suffering. So the concerned calls begin, the family interventions, the well-meaning suggestions to get out more, join a club, stay connected. But here's what those people don't understand. They're measuring your life by the wrong metric.
They're counting connections. You've stopped counting connections. You're measuring something else entirely. You're measuring peace. And what looks like withdrawal from the outside is something completely different from the inside. From the inside, it feels like clarity, like finally being able to hear yourself think, like setting down a weight you've been carrying for 40 years and realizing for the first time how heavy it actually was. That feeling isn't depression. That feeling is your brain telling you something true. And the biology behind that signal, the specific neurological changes happening inside your brain right now, is the most important thing nobody ever told you about getting older.
To understand what's happening, we need to start with your amygdala. Think of it as your brain's alarm system, the part that has been scanning for danger, conflict, and social threat your whole life. When you were young, that alarm was sensitive. It fired at every perceived slight, every social tension, every moment of potential conflict. And it had to, because back then, the stakes were real. A conflict with the wrong person could cost you your job, your reputation, your place in the group. Your alarm was calibrated for that world.
But here's what happens as a man gets older. The alarm quiets down. Not because something broke, because your brain, after 60 years of evidence, has finally learned the difference between a real threat and just noise. The drama that used to consume you, noise. The toxic person you kept trying to manage, not worth the energy. The gatherings that felt mandatory, optional. This isn't bitterness. Your alarm isn't failing. It's finally accurate. But that's only part of it. There's a second shift that explains the pull towards solitude even more clearly. As a man gets older, his brain starts running a very specific calculation. Time is no longer infinite, and the brain knows it. So it starts asking different questions. Not how many people do I know, but which of these people actually matter? Not quantity, quality. When you were 25, your brain was collecting connections. New people, new information, new experiences. The wider the net, the better. But now, your brain has stopped collecting. It's sorting. And the ones that don't make the cut, the draining, the one-sided, the ones who take more than they give, they get quietly set aside. Those unreturned calls, those skipped gatherings, those quietly closed doors. That's not you giving up. That's your brain doing the most important sorting job of your life. And the third piece? This one matters most. The part of your brain responsible for clear judgment, for knowing what's real, what's worth it, and what isn't, takes a full lifetime to reach its peak. In your 20s, emotion overrode it constantly. Social pressure bent your boundaries. The need to be liked shaped decisions you regret now. But at 60, that judgment is fully online. It has 60 years of data. It knows exactly which people have proven themselves,
And which ones have shown you, over and over, exactly who they are. When you cut someone off now, it isn't impulsive. It isn't angry. It's the clearest decision your brain has ever made.
So here's the question. If your brain is already running this process, already recalibrating, already cutting, already choosing,
What do you actually need to do?
the answer is simpler than you might expect. Trust it. Not blindly. Not as an excuse to burn every bridge in sight, but the discomfort you feel when a certain person calls, that quiet heaviness before an obligatory gathering, that sense that a relationship is costing you more than it's giving, that isn't negativity. That is your brain's socio-emotional calculator giving you an accurate reading. Most men at this stage of life have been trained for 6 decades to override that signal, to answer the call anyway, to show up anyway, to smile and nod and perform the role of the agreeable, available, endlessly accommodating man.
And every time they overrode that signal,
They paid for it in energy they didn't have, time they couldn't get back, and a quiet erosion of peace they couldn't explain.
the tip is this.
When you feel that signal, when your brain flags a relationship as draining, a gathering as hollow, a connection as one-sided, stop and ask one simple question. Does this person add to my life or subtract from it? Not occasionally, on balance. If the answer is subtract, your brain already knew that. You don't owe anyone an explanation. You don't need to announce it. You don't need to stage a confrontation. You simply, as you have been doing, close the door quietly and you redirect that energy to the people and the moments that actually deserve it. Because here's the biological truth. The energy you recover from one draining relationship is not a small thing. It is the exact energy that allows you to be fully present with the people who matter. Your patience, your attention, your warmth, your humor. These are not infinite resources. They are precious. They are finite. And at this stage of your life, they deserve to go where they will actually be felt. Let's come back to the beginning. You stopped answering certain calls. You left the group chat. You didn't show up. Now you know what's happening. Your amygdala has quieted. No longer alarmed by noise it has learned to recognize as noise. Your brain's time calculator has shifted from quantity to depth, running its most honest audit of what and who actually matters. And your prefrontal cortex, 6 decades in the making, is finally strong enough to act on what it knows. This is not a man in decline. This is a man whose brain has finally completed its most important development. The men who are worried about you, who think you've become distant, cold, lost, they are still running the young man's program. They still believe that more connections mean more life. But you know something they don't yet. You know that the quality of your inner world, the peace of your mornings, the depth of your remaining relationships, the feeling of absolute alignment between who you are and how you live, that is the whole game. Everything else was preparation. You weren't cutting people off. You were cutting through to what was real. And after 60 years, you finally have the biology to back you up. That's built human. A new behavior decoded every week. See you next time.